Hey, hi everybody. David Fogel, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, back with another podcast, and I'm extremely pleased today to be with award-winning composer Joseph Metcalfe. Joseph, how are you doing today?
Fabulous. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's very much our pleasure. You have a long history that we're gonna enjoy today. You've composed for Disney, for Epcot, for Sony Pictures, Animal Planet, History Channel, and much more, including Paramount lately with your the score for the film Depravity, which I understand is a mystery thriller. From what I've seen on the previews, the music's definitely in the mystery thriller genre, extremely good. And also, more recently, creating a new set of orchestras in the Simi Valley. So we're going to cover all that stuff. But let's start where we usually start at the beginning. How did you get involved in music to begin with?
Oh, it goes back right to, early childhood. The story actually begins with my brother. I was about 3, 4 years old, and my brother was, 6 years older than I am, and he was playing piano, and I just wanted to learn it. And when I asked him if he could teach me how to play the piano, I was just like, nope. And I was like, why not? And he said,
Helpful
because you're
brother.
not. He said because you're not 8 years old yet. And I was
Ah,
like, and I said, what would happen if I did? He said, well, there's a big dragon living inside the piano, and if you push anything other than the E and F next to middle C, then the dragon's going to come out the top of the piano and eat you.
wow.
So I thought, you know what? Let me stick with just E and F. That was the parameters that were put around me, and I did it. And every once in a while, my finger might slip, and I'd apologize profusely to the piano. And then, one day I was at school, or everybody else was at school. I'm still at home, and I was like, I want to see a dragon. And I sat at the edge of the piano seat and just bam, I hit the low G key and I ran out the living room, chased towards
Hilarious.
the kitchen, expecting these gaping jaws to come after me. And, when I realized there was no dragon in the piano, I suddenly realized, wait, I haven't just got two keys, I've got 88 keys. And I could start to just do it. And my fingers, as they bounced up and down musically, I'd listen. Hey, these two notes, when they're played together, they sound good, which would then turn into three notes. And I realized this was chords, and it was really a journey of self-discovery. From there, I just started writing music. By the time that I was, almost in double digits, I had my first pieces of music I was writing. Um, and then started writing musicals. One of my musicals got listened to by a TV producer who then had me up at Abbey Road recording for a TV theme tune. And then I'm at USC film scoring program, and there we are. That's a very abbreviated history.
My goodness. So self-taught from very early age. Did you take formal lessons once you figured out that you could hit all 88 keys, or did you go to your own devices to learn everything along the way?
I started off by myself, and then at 11 years old, I was sent to a great musician. He taught from all his own music that he wrote himself. He was actually one of the BBC television educators. And so I went to him, and after 4 weeks, he called me up and he just got me on the phone. And he said, Joseph, he said, you're wasting my time, you're wasting your mother's money, you're wasting your time, you're going nowhere in music. Don't come back. And that what it was is, granted, I wasn't putting in quite the level of practice that he expected, but also during the classes, I'd start off doing his jazz, not jazz, kind of, and things which are very syncopated. And we get to a certain point, and then I'll just go off playing my own thing. And he's like, no, 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 that's not what the music is playing. And I said, I know, but it sounds better like this. I feel like this is where it needs to go. And I will say that to some extent, I feel that I lost out because of that formality, that I wasn't being rigid with the music. But what I lost out on, I also gained because I was able to play. And I'm a big believer in this. Don't play music as in like perform music. Play music like a child plays with toys, with their imagination. Dare to do things which are a little different. Dare to experiment. And how do I play with music? And that's kind of, that was more of my journey rather than the formality. Of course, by the time I got to USC, there was I learned from some great masters during that program as well.
I'm guessing there's a lot of formality at the USC scoring for a motion picture and TV program. Must
There,
must
there's
be.
Yeah, there was. I mean, a lot of the people who were on that program either had their masters or their doctorate in music. That was, part of the requirement, and I showed up without any of that. I didn't have like a BA. I just had a basic education in British schooling system.
Mhm.
But when I presented my scores to the to Buddy Baker, he was 29 years musical director at Disney, heading up the film scoring department at USC at that particular point, and he just looked at 3 pages of my score, closed the book, and said, "Okay, you're in."
That's
And
awesome.
somehow I managed to work it out.
Yeah, what do you feel you got from that program then, and how and maybe for whatever you know of it now, what
Mhm.
would be your recommendation for other composing students, let's call them, or just people who want to improve, um,
You know,
when they're considering that program, or maybe versus other programs?
I didn't really want to, like, it was never my career path to go to university, because I wanted to learn from people who were doing the job. I wanted to learn, like, get first-hand experience as opposed to just get the academic qualification. Never had any interest in academic qualifications. But what I did appreciate is that, and the reason why I chose to do that program is that everybody on that program was somebody who was working in the industry. So we're talking like Jerry Goldsmith was one of my mentors, Elmer Bernstein, Chris Young, Ron Jones, who did music for Family Guy, American Dad, Star Trek Ninth Generation. Those are the people that I was learning from, and I was like, yes, that's what I hungered for. Um, and so what I would say is, I think there comes both a benefit to education, and there's also something you've got to watch out for, because in your education, and I don't care where you go in terms of um, education gives you an opportunity to play within a safe boundary. It gives you that opportunity to experiment and try things, because it doesn't matter if you get things wrong. Nobody really cares what degree you come out with. What they do care about is, can you do the job? And so it gives you that safe haven to be able to dare to do things a little differently, to experiment, to play around, so that when you're in the real world, and your bottom line is counted, against your performance. Um, that's really, and I'd say look into programs where you get that freedom to play. The downside to it that I would caution against is, when you get out of university, don't feel that because you've got out of university, the world suddenly owes you. It doesn't. You've got to keep working your butt off all the time to get work. Learn to do business. If I would say, while you're at school, learn business elements, learn how to market yourself. Ron Jones was brilliant at teaching that to us. He taught us, really, that was his greatest gift, I think he gave, was teaching marketing, how to position yourself, how to put yourself in the world of business as a creative person. And I would say that once you're out of college, don't think, okay, I've got my degree now. The world owes me a career. No, you're coming out of university with a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. But remember, you're starting off young, like a new business, and you've got to take time to polish yourself, to get the other elements of doing the business of music into place.
And distinguish yourself from others. So there's a little bit of entrepreneurship there too. I mean, it's not like we want to break things like the entrepreneur mantra these days, right? But you still have to be not exactly the same as everybody else, even though you're maybe coming out of a film school where there are a lot of other people coming out who could be just like you, who went through that film school, right? So
Yeah, and don't be
finding your
afraid to.
niche and things like that are tricky sometimes.
They are, and don't be afraid to collaborate. I think, sometimes on a musical journey, you're always looking inward, saying, "Okay, this is about me. This is me. I want to become famous. I want to be successful. I." And there's, along my journey, I've been forced into situations where I've had to collaborate with other people and realize, wait a second, sometimes that's what I've been missing. And and you realize it's not something which is competing against you. It's something which is working, and you can become so much more powerful when you do collaborate with people. So again, look for opportunities, get those eyes open.
I bet you'd agree too, then, that as you're keeping your eyes open and keeping your ears open too, keep listening to other composers' music, maybe not the ones that you would normally listen to, just to take a dabble of what other people are doing, and maybe that'll be the influence that is the spark that creates something new for you as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with borrowing other people's voice to help find your own. We don't have to invent language in order to
Right.
you know, be eloquent in how we're talking. Um, you listen to other people, you learn new words. You listen to other people, you learn new phrases, and how it resonates with you. When you look at music, people say to me, "What is your definition of music?" Music for me, it's the medium to transport emotions through the medium of sound. and or I say sorry, the vehicle to transport emotion through the medium of sound, and that's really what it is. So if you can find out a way to express a particular emotion, sometimes words aren't enough, sometimes music isn't enough, sometimes your musical vocabulary isn't enough. So absolutely, yeah, check in with other people, listen, learn. The moment I stop learning music, it's game over.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, when you're composing something else, I mentioned a long list of things, Disney, Epcot, Sony, and so forth. Are you dedicated on one project at a time, or are you doing things in parallel based upon the timelines that the people are giving you?
You know what? Sometimes you go months without working, and then all of a sudden it rains, it pours, and you've got three projects you're juggling. But when you work out the deadlines. I'm very open with my communication. If I'm working on another project, I'll make sure that everybody knows about it, so that it's not, uh, I don't have to hide anything. I'm very transparent in that side of things, and it's just making sure that you keep up creatively, and you can jump between different emotions, different feelings, different tasks and objectives as well.
Yeah.
But I would say for the majority of the time, some things overlap, but very rarely is it like three major big projects all going on simultaneously.
And when you're taking these things on, do you take them on like you're the person and that's it, or do you have anybody assisting you, or various other team members that could be of assistance to you as you're working on things, or is it just you?
Depends from project to project. And I do as I've kind of like moved forward a little bit, I realized, the gift that I was given of being with Jerry, with Elmer, Chris Young, if I could be that to somebody else, it would be great. And so I do occasionally open the doors for other young composers to come in and actually get some of their music. Or I might just say, look, here's the melody, but I want you to take it and here's do your arrangement of it, making sure you hit these emotions at a points, and we'll refine and adapt and adjust. But yeah, for the majority of it, it is me. But I do like to open the door for other people as well.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, we were talking a little bit before we got started about the Budapest Touring Orchestra, and
Yeah.
there's apparently a very good story here. So, Joseph, tell us your relationship with the Budapest Touring Orchestra.
Well, before the change of the millennium, there wasn't really any scoring in Budapest that was going on. I think Jerry Goldsmith, is what I learned, was actually in 1986. He did a score out there, and then the studio system just went away. Nobody was working in it, and it became very classical music. I ended up quite fortuitously going out to Budapest to score a TV show out there. Where I just moved all my electronic studios, had like all the sound modules and all the sample machines. We shipped them all out from the UK to score them, because the company wanted me physically present there. And over the 8 months I was scoring this children's television series, and there was two different versions. There was a European version that was cut differently from the US version, and I realized that Budapest had five orchestras in Budapest itself, but nobody was using them from scoring. So I spoke to the producer, and after a lot of arm twisting, I said, look, let's get rid of these sound modules. Let's bring in the real orchestra. He's like, but nobody here knows how to do it. And so I was like, well, let me teach them. And we gathered one orchestra that was lovely orchestra. We piled into this room that had like low ceilings, tight walls. We squeezed into a space. It didn't sound great. Um, but we worked with them, got them educated, working to click. Um, and of course Pro Tools was relatively new at those times. We had the Hungarian representative for Pro Tools come and set up a whole rig to record this thing, and we recorded the TV show. And I realized that, wait a second, there's a great opportunity here. Um, the cost of doing this versus what the US was doing. It wasn't that I wanted to compete with any US market. What my big focus was is that I could go into a movie theater, and within 4 notes I could tell whether it was an independent film or if it was a studio film, based solely on the quality of the music.
Mm.
A lot of the independent markets just couldn't touch the orchestras, starting at $250,000 just for the orchestra, and oftentimes they couldn't even have that for their budget. Um, I wanted to create a win-win situation where musicians over there would be paid more money than they were regularly being paid. I wanted to make it more affordable for filmmakers around the world to have that opportunity. So we started marketing the orchestra there, and it started to take off. I flew out actually, and this is part of the story of the journey of that, because I auditioned lots of different musicians from the different orchestras, assembled the core group of people, and I flew to Hungary on the September 10th with about $1.5 million of investor money to go and acquire a new building that we were going to convert into a scoring stage. It was an old cinema in District 7 of Budapest. And I had an architect draw out all the plans. We were turning the projection room into the sound booth, the theater. I mean, it had beautiful acoustics. The screen was still preserved, its original one. And then, of course, the next day, 9/11 happened
Yeah.
and the whole world changed. And my investors called me up and said, "You don't have access to a single penny until we know where the world's going to land." And I got in touch with Abbey Road. I got in touch with Ed Lyndhurst Studios back in London, said, "What's gone on with you?" They said, "We've just had our next 6 months wiped off the slate. No one's doing anything." So I had 2 weeks where I was going to build the facilities, and I thought, let's see what they've got here, which we can utilize. Got some of the wealthy people in Budapest to back us. We went into the Hungarian radio stations, converted them over, and that today is the home of the scoring for the orchestras. So that's how it all began.
It's amazing. We've used Budapest scoring for our Symphonina albums, both of them, and we're doing it again for this year. And
Hmm.
as I mentioned, 51% of last year's album, Advent of the Symphonina, which went to number 1 on the Billboard's traditional classical album charts, Budapest, conducted by Peter Alenyi, who we'll probably have on a podcast in the future. So that's awesome. It's all great.
Wonderful,
We're looking forward to
wonderful.
recording Jordan Janosko there on February 21, and we might be back again before the year's over. So we'll see. So that's all amazing, really, and congratulations for all that and for persevering through a very, very difficult time. I remember that time very well. So
And well, congratulations to you as well for finding that orchestra and trusting it, because it's built and it's grown a lot since its early inception. And I'm very proud. Like anytime anybody says they go out there to work with the orchestra, makes me hugely proud. And so well done. Thank you for doing that.
yeah, sure, sure. Let's talk about the movie Depravity, which I think it's a
Sure.
Paramount production, and if I remember correctly, it's many years in development. And
Mhm.
now out for video on demand. So let's talk a little bit about that. How'd you get involved?
So yeah, it was actually in development long before I came in the project, and I started about 8 years. I was first introduced to it about 8 years before it even went into production.
Hmm.
Um, Paul Tamassi is a great writer and producer. He started off doing the Buddy series for Disney, with the dogs, um, the space. Oh gosh, I'm going to get in trouble if I can't remember all the names of the films. But then
It's okay.
he then Space Buddies. That's what was coming to mind. But then he progressed through his career, and the other thing that he's also got is he's a great passion for soccer, football as we call it. And
Yeah.
we met on the soccer field and hit it off and got talking. And he said, "Look, I've got this script that I've been working on. I want this to be my directorial debut." And because at the same time he had won an Academy Award for or I should say the film The Fighter with Christian Bale,
Mm.
won Christian's first Academy Award. I think it won two, was nominated for seven. Who wrote and produced that film. He has done many extraordinary films: Patriots Days, Finest Hours. And more recently, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is a Guy Ritchie movie. Which, if you haven't seen it, get it. It's just I fell in love with that movie right away. Keeps you riveted there. And but for his directorial debut, he said to me, 7, 8 years ago, he said, "Joe," he said, um, after I read the script, he said, "I want you to score this. I want you to do this." And he stayed true to his word, and he went through many iterations of, adjustments, having to change the locations of it, different cast coming in, and it took about 7 years to get it off the ground from after the time that I joined the project. And he stayed with it, and there we are.
My goodness. So what are your challenges when you're well, one of the challenges is being around for 8 years, but what are the challenges as you're handed a script now? Just kind of thinking like how would you relate it to somebody who's not familiar with scoring? What are you trying to do as you're reading the script and thinking about the music that you want to create for it, just broadly?
I think I try to become one of the actors. or all of the actors. I try to feel the emotions of the scene, and not only from an actor's point of view, but also from the audience point of view. I think if there's any one question that I consistently ask directors when we're talking about the music, it's always, what emotion do you want people to feel? And as a composer, you really have to feel that music because if you can't force it, you can't um, I mean, you can manipulate it, you can do it very logically, but when you're feeling something and trying to find a way to express that emotion, that's what it all comes down to. Now, Paul is a huge fan of music itself, and so he actually tempts the score with a lot of things. He said this is the emotion because maybe he couldn't articulate emotionally what he wanted to get out, but through his choice of music, he could. I could then understand the language of the emotion and reconvert it into what we made of it.
When you're reading through that, and do you have a keyboard in front of you and you're like noodling ideas that come to mind as you're doing it, or is it all in your head? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's in my head and in my heart.
Yeah.
It's and I read the script. I get drawn into scripts very, very easily. I love reading scripts, or when I read them, and I if it's a subject matter that I can really resonate with, I get pulled right into it, and I just feel as if I'm in the scene, and I lose myself to everything else. I just get lost in the moment, and I think that for me has worked out as being a great approach because you get to experience it once for the first time. And when you're writing a score, you're going to see these scenes again and again and again and again, reworking and, going frame by frame with everything. So I really do enjoy that first read through of just losing the rest of the world, get sucked into it.
Yeah. So then when you're putting what's in your mind and in your heart, as you say, uh, on paper, so to speak, are you doing that with a scoring notation program like Sibelius or Dorico or something like that, or are you doing it in Pro Tools and performing it in, or what's your workflow process look like?
Do you know what? I don't think there is one. I don't have a singular workflow. Sometimes it would just be go to the piano and try to just feel it and play it out, and I'll scribble a few notes. Then I'll come back to I use Digital Performer as my main sequencer. And then start orchestrating a little bit inside of that. Sometimes I'll just do it, little bits on paper. Is like I can't play it hands wise, and so I just see it on the notes and on the musical page and just start writing it down. So it comes from all different areas. I don't think I have one set way, and I think that I enjoy that. I'm glad there's not a set way because then you're not locked in. You can always play and explore new areas.
And I suspect that's probably something that is uniquely different to each person's whatever's comfortable for them, right? As a composer,
Yeah,
probably what works for one person may not be the best approach for someone else, and vice versa for that kind of stuff.
100%. Look, your music is your music. It's, you got to make it yours. You got to make it, be true to it because the artist, music, the control of music can be taken away. I write a piece of music for film. The film company owns it. I don't own that music anymore. But you can have everything else taken away from you, but they can't take you away from you as long as you preserve yourself and just stay true to integrity. So, dare to be yourself. Dare to do something that is just like this is my way of doing it, and it doesn't matter whether it's somebody else's way. But having said that, I still keep learning. Like I love going with other composers and just watching them in their process, or going on to scoring stages and listening, watching how they're making alterations even there on the stage because it inspires me to think of different ways and think of new angles and approaches. So keep that openness as well.
I love that. So we go from creating Budapest scoring to now you're creating two new orchestras, as I understand it, in Simi Valley, the Simi Valley Orchestra, and also a youth orchestra. So for those who don't know where Simi Valley is, it's basically northwest of Los Angeles on the way to Santa Barbara, give or take, somewhere around Thousand Oaks. And first of all, let me ask, was there any effect of the fires of the Palisade Fire in that area? I'm guessing probably a little, but maybe not directly.
We had like three or four mini fires start up during that whole time, and the fire departments out here were fantastic. Got them out as quick as they started. They were fantastic. So,
That's all good.
fortunately, but I do want to give a shout out because we do know a lot of people. In fact, one of my
Yeah.
co-composers on a movie called The King's Daughter, he lost everything. He sent me a picture of his music studio after the fires, and you can make out that there's a frame of a piano and the metal structure of his mixing desk. So, yeah, really heartfelt
Definitely,
thoughts
we
and
both know
for
people in that
everybody.
situation. Yeah. Very, very unfortunate. But let's go back to the Simi Valley Orchestra, brand new. So tell
Yep.
us about your vision and your mission and what you're looking to achieve in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, we started the orchestras back in late 23. There was we toyed with the idea for a few years because there's just, there's no orchestra out in this part of Southern California. The San Fernando Valley is kind of south of us, or sorry, to the east of us. And then, Thousand Oaks has an orchestra down there, but nothing really for film scoring. And I toyed with the idea, and then early 2024, Simi Valley was hosting a 50th anniversary of the Little House on the Prairie. The Chamber of Commerce was putting that up. And I was speaking with the president, Kathy Van Etten, who Katie and I actually were both speaking with her. And she had mentioned about, doing something with the community. And I just, my light bulbs just went on. I said, well, why don't we create a community orchestra to play the theme for Little House on the Prairie and some more music? So we put the word out, had a little town hall meeting, and 40 people showed up for that. And I was like, okay, this is pretty good.
That is good.
It's reached it, and so we gathered together for a rehearsal, and I have to say, hand on heart, it was possibly the worst musical experience I'd ever had in my entire life. Um, it's,
Okay.
some of the clarinet's parts hadn't been transposed properly.
Oh goodness.
The
Okay.
musicians were, some people were playing just hadn't tuned up well. Anyway, long and short of it is that we worked over several weeks and got it really nicely polished. And we showed up. We decided to announce this orchestra. Simi Valley has a street fair twice a year. It has about 20,000 people come through, and we did a flash mob orchestra where suddenly out the blue somebody just starts playing a French horn.
What a cool
Jennifer,
idea.
it was great. She started
Yeah.
then, and
Brilliant.
Andrew comes up with the second one. And so, once we actually got to the actual event, we had 93 musicians in our orchestra from within the community. It was a huge endeavor, and we did it really well. It wasn't perfect by any means, but we had grown a lot through it, and there was just no way we could let this die. So we went on. We did about 10 different other performances in 2024, which we're very proud of, and then. Realizing we added to that a choir as well for the Christmas time. So we
Wow, there you
created
go.
a valley choir.
Yeah.
And now we've just realized, there's a lot of very talented youth that we want to give them a chance to get exposure to the classical environment, but not just classical, fun ensemble music. So it's something which is they're going to be able to carry through as an experience through into their futures as well. Hopefully, getting scholarships into universities, colleges along their journey. So we are right now in the middle of doing auditions for that. And we got some very adventurous plans, some very big plans, which I can't say too much about right now because we're waiting for some approvals.
That's okay. Keep in mind if you would for us, especially on the youth
Yeah.
side. As you may know, we have our own international Symphonina orchestra, which performs typically one Symphonina on our album annually, and that's a collection of players from all over around the world, literally, where each person just records their own part in their own studio, and then I mix them all together to make them sound as if they played together. And my colleague Gary Gray does the mastering, and it comes out very nicely. And we try to get about 50% of the players to be young, aspiring professionals. Not typically at the youth orchestra level, but if you have some very good youth orchestra players, that could be a great experience for them. The other 50% are elite professionals who've already made it, and they're performing with symphony orchestras, or in one case, Oleg Wojcik, he's concertmaster of the Lviv Opera in Ukraine. So, they get to be on an album and maybe be number one on Billboard. You never know. So, hopefully you can keep your eyes open and ears open for some talent who might like to take that on as a challenge for us.
That's phenomenal. I really applaud that project. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what else is up for you this year? Although that's already a lot, so maybe that's enough.
And oh, I wish it was enough. No, we two things I'm going to talk about actually. We've Katie Garibaldi and myself. We actually run a film festival together, which we've actually split into two film festivals. So we have coming up at the end of February. We have the Simi Music Video Fest, where we're bringing people who are, and we do have some classical music in there as well. So anybody who's made a music video sends it in to us. We put it in front of a panel of judges. They make our selection, and we have an afternoon, evening of have screenings on the big screen of music videos with an award ceremony. And then, of course, we run the film festival as well, the Simi Film Fest. And last year we actually had the orchestra come out and perform as a little surprise performance for all the filmmakers that were there, which was huge. And then also at this festival, and I wish we could talk about it, maybe I'll come back some other time, talk about it a little bit more. We've cracked, we feel we've partnered up with somebody now who we feel has cracked the nut of being able to return mechanical royalties back to musicians again. So people who are going and creating their own albums, whether you're an artist, a composer, performer, anything, to be able to get that mechanical royalty in the digital world. And we're going to be announcing it and releasing that at the Simi Music Video Fest on February 22nd and 23rd. So it's huge, and I've never seen anything that's got me so excited. I mean, I saw an orchestra opportunity that became a world leader. It's one of Europe's busiest orchestras now. Saw that opportunity, grabbed it. To me, this is going to open the doorway to allow musicians to actually take control of their revenue earnings. Right now, you put out an album, you need 50,000 plays, 50 to 100,000 plays to make a couple $100 in residuals. This is going to change. It's a game changer. So we're very, very excited about that.
Well, I'm excited just listening to the prospects of that. So we'll definitely be having you back for part 2 when we're ready. And if I'm able, I'll be up there to see your performance on the 22nd. Was it right? The February 22nd?
February 20th, yeah, February 22nd, we'll actually be making the announcement of the launch of it, and
all right.
It's phenomenal.
That sounds great. Joseph, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
Probably the best way is go through Katie Garibaldi. She's found at al@moon.com. You can send messages right through there. She's my manager and takes care of everything that way. And of course, if you want to go to my website, josephmetcalfe.com. Metcalfe has an E at the end. Then they'll do that, and emails will go through to Katie there as well.
You have a contact page there, right? I believe
there is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Joseph, it's been just such a great pleasure to meet you and talk with you today. Thanks so much for your time.
David, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.